Right. So today we are going to discuss this very important topic on challenges in raising teenagers. So essentially, this topic came to our attention, or was something that was always on our mind. We have been doing sessions for parents from quite some time, but I think the recent accident that took place in Pune Porsche incident that you remember was again brought to the fore the question of teenagers and how reckless they can be at this age and how difficult it can be for parents to manage them. So therefore, we kind of decided to push for it this week. We are thankful to Dr. Jamila, who's here today to lead us in the session. A quick introduction about Dr. Jamila Koshy. Dr. Jamila Koshy is a psychiatrist by practice. She graduated from the Armed Force Medical College, Pune, and completed her postgraduate studies in psychological medicine from the University of Mumbai. She has served in the Indian Army, and she has also written books and journals on different topics that relate to family and society. So we are very thankful that she's here today. Over to Dr. Jamila to lead us in this session, challenges in raising teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Abhijit. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you and to discuss this important topic. Yes, it has been on our minds a lot, I think, after that Pune car crash. And of course, this keeps happening, one thing or another. And what we've noticed is that any session on parenting usually gets all of us interested because it's something which is universal, right? All of us have been children and have struggled with the way we've been parented, or we've been parents and we're struggling with the way we are to parent. So there is always questions, there are always issues to discuss. Okay, let me share my screen and we will get into it. Clear? Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So when we were discussing the topic, we were wondering what sort of picture to put up, and Abhijit and I had a little talk about it, and we thought, at least I thought, that it's always better for us to remember to be hopeful in all this. We shouldn't run away with the idea that it's all very difficult and there's no way that we can do this properly, and it's possible to be very negative and very pessimistic about this whole area. It's sometimes like people get into marriage without expecting that we're going to have a lot of in-law problems or we're going to have a lot of adjustment problems. Yeah, of course, there will be problems, but we also need to be confident that, okay, we can navigate it. We can get through this. We can do as well as possible, and we'll manage somehow. So the first thing that I want to say is we need to be hopeful, and we need to see the positive side of this, because there's a lot of fun in parenting teenagers. There are a lot of good times. There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of delight, and it's something that all of us can do with some success and some failures. But that's all right. We can, we'll get through it. All right. So let's not blame ourselves, feel pessimistic, guilty, whatever. So let's start with that idea. And I've picked two happy pictures of parents who are obviously loving their children and spending time with them, and that sort of thing. All right. So let's go on now to the next issue, which is what is the life cycle of a human being. I usually like to start with this because it helps us to understand that there are different stages in the growth of a person. So if you start here at this corner from infancy, you go on to the next stage, okay? And then the third stage, preschool, and then the fourth stage of schooling. And then you come to adolescence, which is what we're going to be talking about. But there are issues and things to be learned and a normal pattern of growth till this. The adolescent doesn't drop into heaven, drop into our families as an adolescent, right? They have grown there. And what they have experienced in their previous stages of growth is going to influence them as adults. And the kind of parenting that we have done till the child becomes an adolescent is going to either pay off or have some consequences or deficits. So we need to understand this. So very briefly, we will look at what the previous stages were and what was supposed to have been achieved in those stages. In infancy, the task of the parent and the task of the child in that sense is to achieve a sense of trust in the world. So you learn as a child that the world can be a trustworthy place or a place which cannot be trusted. So if there is not adequate parenting, if there's not adequate love and cuddling and provision of milk and provision of clean clothes or cleaning up the baby when they mess and all the other things that go into taking care of an infant, when that is there, the infant learns trust. It's not consciously learned, but it's an unconscious thing which happens inside. The child learns that when I cry, I get picked up, I get cuddled, I get loved, I get fed. Now, similarly, the next stage is the stage of toilet training, right? Where the child learns that they have a certain amount of autonomy. They can, they learn to grow, explore, their own bodies are growing. They learn to manage all this. And if it's handled well and if it's handled with a certain degree of confidence and giving the child autonomy and not scolding the child or being over anxious, that is the stage that the child passes through. Then the child comes to the stage of the preschool child, where the main task is to learn how to play. So the sense of taking initiative, initiating games, initiating copying adult roles, initiating the whole idea of the copying of parents, all that sort of thing, it leads to a sense of initiative in the child. So this is important in the growth of the child. When you come to the next stage, that is the stage of going to school. And at this stage, the child has to learn a sense of industry. That when I work hard, something happens. When I sit in class and listen and do my homework and do all these things, there is some fruit and reward which comes to me. The teachers are pleased with me, my parents are pleased with me, I learn something, I feel a sense of achievement and empowerment. And if I don't do those things, I end up feeling a sense of inferiority, being called out, being picked on, being scolded, all these other things which happen. So that sense of learning and exploring has to continue on into the school stage. And then you come to the whole stage of adolescence. So let's look at adolescence. What is it? Let's look at it in a little more detail. What is it that is happening? What are the characteristics of adolescence? So I've divided it into 5 areas roughly. Now, the body changes we all know about, right? A child is born with sexual characteristics. So a baby boy will have a penis, a baby girl will have a vagina, and of course the rest of the body is more or less the same in the externals as the child is born. But then as the child grows into adolescence, there are secondary sexual characteristics which happen. So boys, for instance, girls first shoot up, but after that boys shoot up even more. And then boys put on a certain amount of musculature. They become most muscular, whereas girls develop, their body changes into a more shapely pattern where there is a deposition of fat, which makes a girl's body different from a boy's body. And of course, there's a further development of the sexual organs. And this stage is very important, right? Menstruation starts in girls. Boys start also being sexually, active. So this is a high energy stage. Adolescents are very high energy, and their bodies are changing very fast. You might see a child within 2 months, you'll suddenly find a 5-foot child has suddenly reached 6 feet, right? It can happen so suddenly. Now, along with the body changes, there are also mental changes that happen. So there is a psychologist called Piaget who did this theory of how the brain develops in children. So there is a first stage which is just on sensing. You touch things, you feel things, you smell, you cry. It's a very sensory motor stage. In the next stage, the child learns to talk. The child learns to use a certain amount of vocabulary. The child learns to name objects, things like that. It's a pre-operational stage. Then the next stage, the child learns to apply a certain amount of logic, to understand a certain amount of things, to understand basic sciences, to understand to be able to do a test, to be able to do chores at home. So there's a concrete operational stage which has happened. Some logic is learned, but not too much. And finally, in adolescence, in 12 plus years, the child learns to have abstract thinking, where you are able to understand concepts, where you are able to understand philosophical ideas or arguments or political theories or stuff like that. So this stage in an adolescent is very important because this is something which adolescents love to do. They love to question and argue. Okay, they love to talk about things. They're thinking about things, and this stage is however, see, the critical thinking faculties are developing, but it's still a very emotional kind of thought process which often happens. So the adolescent functions on emotion to a large extent, and that emotional response is best described this way. See, it's the emotional center, which is a limbic system of the brain, the hidden internal primitive part of the brain, which is still responding. So adolescent will have a severe mood changes. They'll be sometimes happy, sometimes sad. They will quickly get angry or irritated with parents. They may sulk. They may want to lock themselves in their room. These are the mood changes which are happening because of the development of the limbic system. And there's no control over this. The prefrontal cortex, unfortunately, develops the last. So the child is not able to control the emotional impulses which are developing. All right. So there's high emotion without frontal control. And this is the mental changes which are happening to the child. Now, at the same time, the child is also developing their personality and their identity. So all these questions and emotions and thinking through things, it is leading the child in a direction. They're trying to figure out what kind of a person am I going to be? Am I going to be like my parents? Am I going to accept everything they say? Am I going to live my life this way, that way? Will I be a scientist, an IT person? Will I be a teacher like my mom? Will I, be a religious person, or do I feel that God doesn't exist? Or what am I going to be? What clothes am I going to wear? Who am I going to copy? Who are my heroes? All these things are going on inside the child's mind. Now, social things also are happening simultaneously. Friends become very important. Because friends are very important, they might replace parents thing doesn't actually happen, but they may want to spend a lot of time with their friends. They talk to them on phone for hours together. They might want to. They meet them at school, they come back, and again they want to talk to them on whatever social media or whatever. And along with this friends' importance, peer pressure happens. So whatever their friends think is cool, they also want to do because they want to be seen as cool and in with the cool crowd. It might not be said in so many words, but this certainly exists. So peer pressure for different things. If it's for good things, great. But sometimes it might be for things which are, again, things which the teenager may not be able to control. So addiction, smoking, drinking, drugs or weed or all these things could be a temptation. Movies, porn, all these things may happen. Going abroad nowadays to study is very much a peer pressure thing, all right? So these things happen. And simultaneously in the social group, there are also these multiple friendships which are happening. So there are girlfriends, there are boyfriends, or there's romantic involvement, there is best friend involvement. All these things are happening to the teenagers. So they have a very active social life. Okay. Now, along with that, behaviorally, because they have this high energy and they are thinking and wanting to do, they want to establish themselves as a separate person with a certain identity, they may get into taking all sorts of risks. Risk taking is very common in this stage. As they're moving into adolescence, they're figuring out what they want to be. They might take something adult, but they are not able to control it, judge the risks properly. So sometimes adolescents can get into this kind of risky behavior. We'll come to that, particularly in the Porsche incident, which Abhijit mentioned. All right. So now that we have understood what adolescence is, okay, and what is going on here, now what we want to do is we want to understand, maybe I should just go back one slide and just tell you that this is what the prefrontal cortex controls. I didn't talk about this. The child has an emotional response or an emotional connection to something. Maybe they want uh, they want to dress like their favorite film star, or they see their friend who has a certain clothes or a certain phone or a certain something, and they want it, they ask for it. The thing is that normally the prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain is the part which is able to focus, analyze, judge, okay, and make complex decisions, to be able to think in the abstract, that things like, can we afford this, why are we going to use this, uh, how long will this last, why exactly am I copying this friend of mine? So these abstract questions with complex nuances, these sort of things may not uh, completely come to the consciousness of the adolescent, and they might just take quick emotional reactions. Okay, so having seen that these are the changes that happen to the adolescent, what we want to do as parents is we have to think, what do we want to see happening in their lives at this stage? And how do we ensure that it is happening in the best way? And how do we correct any mistakes? Okay, so I'm going to focus on these three areas only. All right, so what are the things we need to see happening in their lives at this stage? Okay, so going back to that first slide which I showed you, the stages of development. Okay, so we talked about infancy, then the toilet training period, then the preschool period, okay, and then the school period, and then the adolescent period. So what are the things that they need to learn? We talked about it. So here we need to see that the first stage child has to learn confidence in people, feeling safe and loved. A child who is safe and loved will will it'll be much easier for them to develop this sense of personal control, that I'm an individual, I can control my life, I can, I can use the toilet, I can explore, I can do this, I can do that. So that thing comes when you are safe and loved. As you learn this sense of autonomy, you're then able to get into the initiative part, directing play, initiating play things, social interactions, feeling empowered. This happens as a natural next stage. Then we come to industry. And because this is just pre-adolescence, I'm going to focus a little bit on this. Because sometimes if we do not teach this to our pre-teens, then the teenagers will have this deficit in their learning, which has to be filled consciously by the parents in the teenage. So you have to teach them the responsibility of studying and schoolwork, but role role modeling it and encouraging them to do it and providing all the resources for it, but then stepping back and allowing them to do it. Okay, now often we find that parents are so involved in the study of their children that it's almost as if they are doing it. All right, they feel a sense of ownership and they feel a sense of responsibility, that I have to make my child study. So often these are the words that are used: I have to make my child study, I have to teach the child, or we have a unit test coming up, right? That's the word which is often used. Whereas actually we don't, the child does, right? We don't have to study, they have to study. So this distinction is very important, and we have to get the child to realize this, that this is your study and it is for learning and getting to know different skills and different aspects of life, which can be a lot of fun. So to introduce the child to the to the whole knowledge resource of the world, that's a delightful task for parents. We need to allow them to find joy in learning. That is the main thing that has to be learned. When the child learns that, the child will automatically put in effort and industry into this. They may not if we are focusing more on the marks and on the success of their learning. If we are focusing on the joy of learning, they will learn to do it without worrying too much about the marks and all that. So this is something which is very important. And this is an important time for us to prepare them for teenage by helping them to learn and experience academic achievements in many many areas. So start discussing with them everything, provide them books, whether in science or in astronomy or in uh, different languages or crafts or history. So we are encouraging the child to learn all these things, whether it's books or the net or whatever. So this can be done. We have to supervise and check progress, offer help, and give it when it is requested. But otherwise, let the child get on with their own work. All right. Then now we come to adolescence. Having done all this, Now is the time when we have to hope. This is what we hope for the child. We want them to mature physically without too many body issues. All right. So we want the boy to grow up into a young man. Okay. So his body will change, his voice will break, he will want to be more interested in building his muscles a little bit. He'll be hoping that he gets taller. He may be struggling with his acne. All these things will be there. Similarly, girls will be growing into young women. They will start having their periods. They will have to learn how to wear, a brazier. They will have to start to learn to wear different clothes. So all these things have to be honestly and openly discussed with the children. So this is our hope, that they will mature without too many body issues. Everybody will have a few body issues. That's okay. But without, so we have to navigate this thing. That is what we hope. Now we should expect and hope that they will ask questions, because as I said, they are their minds have exploded into this abstract thinking. So they will want to ask questions. If they're not asking questions, we need to ask why they're not asking questions. Have we stopped them? Have we been negative? Have we said, oh, this is not to be discussed? Have we said, you are asking questions all the time. Why do you question everything? You just have to accept what I say because I said. So if we are squashing them and not allowing them to ask questions, then that will actually cramp them. Okay, that is not a good thing. No matter how tough or sacrilegious or direct, whatever the questions are on anything, whether it is the problems in our particular community, whether it is denying the existence of God, whether it is about different kinds of sexuality, whatever it is, allow them to ask questions on all difficult subjects, and we hope that they will get the right and honest answers, including differences of opinion, including keeping it in simple terms without jargon, including discussing the mistakes in our family, our community, or whatever. Okay, so all these things have to be, this process has to go on. We are hoping that they will have healthy experimentation with clothes and friends without buckling to peer pressure. Okay, whether it is on these slightly dangerous things, getting into early teenage sex or romance, getting into drugs. These things we want them to avoid, but we want them to otherwise have healthy experimentation so that they would decide for themselves what kind of clothes they want to wear, what kind of friends they want to be with, what kind of line they want to take in their studies, all these things. Our ultimate hope is we are going to form an emotionally stable and well-rounded personality, because their emotions are also in flux. So we want them to learn how to handle their emotions and to become well-rounded persons. This is our goal. The next thing we said was, what do parents do? What is the parents' role in all this in order to make this happen? Okay, so my point here is that we need to talk to them about all these issues. All right. So, for instance, we said one of the things was that their bodies are changing very fast. So, as parents, we need to talk to them about their bodies and the changes to expect. We can sort of tell them, yeah, you're going to get taller, you're going to need bigger shoes. Okay. And where girls are concerned, we should have a talk with them about menstruation and the body changes that we can expect along with that, and the need for new kind of clothes. Okay, where boys are concerned, we might have to talk to them about sexual maturation and wet dreams and things like that, masturbation, but all these things will come up, and we're going to have to find it inside us to be able to talk with the children honestly and simply in the language that they can understand about all these things. And if there are issues, if there are questions, if there are any problems, we need to deal with it as required. So whether it's acne, or whether it is not putting on height, or whether it is they want to go to the gym, or whatever it is, we have to have a continuous process of helping them to grow physically. Now, because young people are very energetic, we need to give them good outlets for their energy. So you're going to have to find things. You can't expect them to be studying with their books all the time and not be restless with their energy. So we have to provide them outlets, whether it is games, whether it is going running with them, okay, whether it is encouraging them to learn a new sport or swimming, or just taking a walk in the park every day, or whatever it is. Find outlets for their energy and also for their creativity, because they have high energy. We don't want it to go to waste. So introduce them to as many activities and as many outlets as possible. It doesn't have to be expensive stuff. It can be things which are cheaper, which are available, which are there in the neighborhood, okay, which is there in our church, or in somebody is teaching something. So find outlets for their creativity so that they feel empowered and confident. The more they learn, the more confident they're going to be. This is what parents have to do. Remember, this is transition time. So parents of small kids are now going to have to parent an almost adult. So we also have to change from being directive and, you know, corrective parents, restrictive sometimes about their safety and all that. Now we have to change. We have to allow them more and more freedom of choice. We have to allow them to talk about what they want. They might raise uncomfortable questions for us, and we need to be able to take it and to respond correctly. I put one picture here which I hope is not what we do. All right, so we shouldn't be using a megaphone and shouting at our children or lecturing them, right? It should be a two-way conversation, not a monologue, not a one-way conversation. Those aren't helpful at all. Whereas it's surprising how many parents do this one-way thing. Okay, and sometimes in my clinic I see a lot of these kind of parents who want to teach the children, but they are giving a lecture. They are, it's a long lecture. It doesn't really help. Sometimes our students our children used to tell us about one of their principals who used to give a 40-minute sermon every day. Now 40-minute sermon for children from 5th standard till 12th standard is really a little too much, isn't it? So, well, that's how it is. So we have to allow them to question and challenge. We have to allow them to raise issues, raise the questions, and keep it interactive and talking. Okay. For instance, I am hoping that as we go into the session, there'll be a lot of questions and interactions as well. Okay. So write down your questions so that we can interact now. To give you an example of how we should interact and be open to questions and dissent and anything. And it's fine if people do that. It's good. So give them freedom of choice rather than telling them what to wear or telling them what not to wear. Give choices, give a range of stuff which is okay to wear. And if there's something which, for instance, they want to wear which is not acceptable to you, you'll have to look within yourself and see why you're saying that. Was it just your own cultural baggage? Was it your community rule? Was that the rule of your times? Is it okay for the children to do that now? Have times changed? You need to be able to talk about it and give them more freedom of choice to decide for themselves. I'm not saying we have to agree to everything they say. There may be times when you set down the rule and say, no, this is not acceptable, but we need to talk about it, be flexible, adjust, okay, and negotiate these things rather than being as directive as when the children were smaller and when we were the controlling parent. Allow them to make those mistakes. That helps them. They might wear something, realize it's not suitable, and find that somebody gave them a feedback that this is not suitable. And they may say that, mom, you were right. I don't want to wear this. Okay. Now, emotions. We need to help them to understand and process their emotions without we getting emotional about it. Okay. So teaching the children emotional control is very important. It's important even for people to just accept their emotion and name their emotion. It's surprising how many people particularly, I think this applies to parents of boys. We need to allow our boys also to understand and name their emotions. Many boys are not able to do this. They're not able to express that I'm feeling sad because it is not an accepted emotion for boys. They're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed to feel inadequate. They're not allowed to feel, vulnerable. So this is not okay. We need to be able to help our teenagers to understand and process their emotions, boys and girls, all right, so that they can then understand how to express these emotions in a proper manner. Okay, we would have to probably tell them that, look, there are times when all of us feel vulnerable. There's nothing strange about feeling vulnerable. There are times when all of us feel sad. And then you can explain to them that moods normally change. It indicates that there is something going on in our life. Maybe it's physical, maybe we're just tired, maybe your period is coming, maybe you had a bad fight with your best friend. Whatever it is, there's something there which caused you to feel sad. but it's okay. Emotions normally change. Let's see if we can do something about the problem. And if you still feel bad tomorrow, let's see what we can do about it. So we're talking about it, allowing the child to understand, helping them to understand that things might move on, and to figure out what they can do about the root cause. And how do you express it? If you're sad, does that mean that you should go to your room and lock yourself up and not talk to people for 5 days? Or is there a better way to express it? So you will again discuss this with them and role model how you yourself handle sadness, talk about it, this sort of thing. So dealing with emotions is something that parents of teenagers will have to do. Also, we need to think about this risk taking issue. All right, teenagers particularly want to take risks. They want to do things to establish that they are adult human beings, making their choices, doing things, achieving something. This is the thing. So allow them and encourage them to take risks in safe settings so that they can judge for themselves what is safe and what is not. So figure out ways. Okay, this is a creative process for the parents as well as for the teenagers to figure out what can be done. Now, if a child wants to say wants to learn how to drive, right? So rather than allowing them to drive fast on the road, you will first, encourage them that, okay, you want to learn how to drive. Let's go to a place which is really safe. For instance, you go to an empty parking lot in the morning and you help them to drive. You help them to learn how to handle the wheel. You help them to learn when to control. You help them to learn how to, negotiate corners. So you're teaching them in a safe setting. Find safe settings for them to learn. You need to also, this is a good thing which again I think many people don't do. We need to introduce our children to high functioning peers or slightly older youth, okay, so that we're not saying that don't be friends with these people or that people. This is what we often do. We restrict their friendships with people who we think might be a bad influence, okay. But the other side is that we need to introduce them to high functioning peers and maybe slightly older youth who have already negotiated some of this and who have learned their lessons and who have become mature and wiser. So introduce them to such people and ask them to take a little bit of interest in your teenager so that they have somebody who they can look up to and role model themselves on, if at all they feel that, oh, my parents are old fogies, they don't understand what I'm saying. All right. Okay, so this is some of what we have to do. Now I just want to remember, repeat here that the parents' role is vital. We may think that they listen more to the peers and to the teachers and all that, and to their heroes and to the film stars and all that, but actually the parents' role is vital. Many studies have shown that, for instance, children of religious parents, okay, who live out their faith in a correct way, often tend to voluntarily follow their parents into that kind of a lifestyle. Okay, so parents' role is vital. And what do I mean when I say the parents' role? It's not what we tell them always. It's more than telling, it is how we maturely role model adulthood. Okay. What are we showing them about work? Are we showing them that we hate our jobs and we're just doing it because we need to get money? Are we showing them that we cut corners? Are we showing them that we take no joy in our work? We only take joy in getting promotions or money? Or is this what we're demonstrating about work? Or are we demonstrating that we enjoy our work? We find it fulfilling and satisfying. We love to find new ways of doing our work. We want to make our work better and better. We take leadership in our areas of work. Is this what we're demonstrating? When it comes to romance, what are we demonstrating? Are we showing that we have a loving relationship with our spouse, that we enjoy each other, we delight in each other, we may fight, but we make up in front of the children so that the children know that things are okay now? Okay. So do we demonstrate this kind of a romantic relationship, or are we again not doing that? Are we, maybe indifferent or cold or fighting all the time? Or is this what we are putting up? How do we demonstrate creativity? Are we showing that we enjoy being creative people, even if it's even if it's our work in a mundane place? Do we show how can be creative in that? When we are taking care of home, do we show how we can be creative in the different things we do in our home? What about relationships with family? Do we demonstrate that we care, show care and concern for all members of the family, that we respect, people for what they are, that we make up with them if you've had a problem with them, okay? That we try to bring people together. Is this what we are demonstrating? How do we behave with the other sex? Are we showing respect for the other sex? Again, this would apply to both men and women, but particularly fathers would be role models for their sons. No? How do you talk about women? Do you make sexist jokes about them? Do you laugh when others make sexist jokes? Do you demonstrate that you value and respect all women, and you are close only, intimately close only with your wife? Is this what you're demonstrating, or are you demonstrating a lifestyle and attitude which is different, which your son will pick up and copy? Similarly, women, what are you demonstrating to your daughter? Are you demonstrating that value what you are, and you can make the best of what you have, and you are trying your best to give you know uh, to sort of improve your relationships with everybody, men and women, without going, without crossing any lines? Are you demonstrating this to your daughter, to your sons? Community. Do we show that we care about our community, that community is important? Do we show that we care about our country, that we are concerned about where it's going, that we're concerned about the politics of the country, we're concerned about paying our taxes, we're concerned about following the laws of the land? Are we showing all this? When we live this out, children will see it, the teenagers will follow. If we don't live it out, if we do the opposite, the teenagers will follow suit. Okay, and we'll come to that again. We need to role model virtue. I know this is perhaps a little strange to say, but don't we need to role model virtue? Shouldn't we be people who are good, who are patient, who are kind, who are faithful, who are very gentle people? Should we demonstrate self-control, that we do not, get drunk every day, or we do not, go overboard with shopping every day, or we do not spend money just on ourselves? We are careful. We give to the poor. We take care of those who are weak in our family. We do not look for position and power. Do we demonstrate all this? Do we demonstrate humility, that we do not think too highly of ourselves, but we can laugh at ourselves? Do we demonstrate open-mindedness? Can we change our mind? Are we open to change at all? Are we rigid in our thinking? Do we think that, okay, I know everything, you don't need to teach me anything? That's not being open-minded, that's closed-minded. What are we demonstrating to our children? If we are religious people, do we show that our relationship with God is an honest relationship? Okay, are we living it out? When we make mistakes, do we say sorry to our spouse? If we have done something wrong, would we try to gloss over it and cover it up? All these things the teenagers will see and copy and learn. All right. One slide on how to discipline teens. As I said, I'm just giving a little brief stuff, and after that, there'll be time for questions. So please, I'll just take a few minutes more. Please write down your questions so that we can continue to talk about it. Okay. How do we discipline teens? I said, how do we correct mistakes? So that was the third thing that I said. I talked about it in 3 areas. What we expect to happen to the teenager, how we can facilitate it best. That's what we just talked about. And now, how do we correct our mistakes? So there might be mistakes which happen. We may make mistakes. The teenager may make mistakes. Definitely, 100% it's going to happen. So we need to be first aware that this is going to happen. Okay, these are the various areas in which teens may make mistakes. They may, be emotional. They may be a little moody. They may not listen. They may sometimes be a little rebellious. Okay, they may cross some lines with their friends, or they may sort of be a little cheeky sometimes, or something. There may be different kinds of things that might happen. They may want to experiment with certain things. All these things may be, possibly happening. So we need to be aware and look ahead and be careful about it. At the same time, we should not be comparing the child to other people. Okay, so to say that what will others think, that is not what we should ever say. That tells the teenager that you're more concerned about society than you're concerned about the teenager, about that person. So don't ever say that. Okay, let's be careful not to let the teenager think that we are more concerned about what society has to say than what the child is or wants or whatever. We need to be very patient. Okay. Now, I put this picture up here in the disciplining section. You may think it is actually for something else, no comfort. But I think even disciplining should be done with this kind of attitude. Okay. We need to be able to discipline the child in this gentle way. This is what disciplining a teenager is about. There is no space for physical punishment here. There's no space for yelling and getting mad. And okay, that's not what we should be doing. We should be discussing the conflict calmly. And here, husband and wife have to help each other. There may be times when we don't make it. There may be times when we lose control. Okay. But then that's not ideal. And we should know when we have done that. And when we do that, we should be able to apologize for our mistakes and tell the children that, look, I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sorry I got upset. Okay. We need to be able to say that. And we need to come back to discussing the conflict calmly. Now, if the child has definitely crossed a line, okay, you might have had some rule or some expectation from the child, which was very genuine. Both husband and wife agree. Okay, you should be agreed on this. So I didn't mention that. I'm saying it here now, though, that husband and wife should be agreed on parenting. One big problem happens when husband and wife are doing their parenting separately and differently and in conflict with each other. So if you're doing it together, you need to sort of discuss together that, okay, this line was crossed. So the teenager should not have done this. And perhaps there is some correction which needs to be done. Now, there's no space for physical punishment. As I said, you should definitely not be hitting a grown-up child. That's not good at all. You can expect some kind of apology. All right. You can say that I expect you to say sorry to dad, sorry to mom, whatever it is. You can expect some kind of restitution if it's done to a sibling or to someone else. Okay, that you need to do this to make up, go and give them a hug or say you're sorry or do this for them or whatever. Perhaps you may need to restrict privileges. That is a pretty effective punishment, actually. Okay. Uh, Loss of phone time or loss of being able to go out with their friends, whatever it is. You might restrict privileges. That is possible, but you should not be doing any physical punishment. Now, very importantly, don't save the child for consequences of their mistakes. If they have not studied or they've not finished their assignment, do not send a letter to the teacher saying the child was sick. Okay, because the child was not sick. The child just didn't do their homework. Allow them to face the consequences, which is that the teacher may yell at them. The teacher may express disappointment in them. It's important for the child to go through that, to understand that when I fail or when I do something which is not appropriate, I will face some consequence. Do not save them from the consequences. But if you have had any kind of such conflict, try to restore the relationship as soon as possible after this correction is made. Okay, so forgive and restore the relationship as soon as possible, so that you are again admitting the child into that same relationship and sort of forgetting and going on. So this is our ideal attitude to punishing or correcting teenagers. All right. Yes, I'm going to take one slide on teaching faith and discipleship. Okay. Whatever religion you are from, this would apply. Okay, so let's just talk about this. I think that in order to teach religious faith to a child, the most important thing is for them again to see your faith in action. You need to be open about your life and let them see your life. Don't have too many hidden areas. Not to say that you have to say everything to your children. No, of course not. But let them into more and more of your life. How do you handle your work? How do you handle your finances? What are your finances? What do you give to? What is your earning? What do you save? What do you share with other family members? What do you give to charities or to your church denomination? Whatever it is, allow them to see more and more as they grow up. Share what has happened in your life, and if you have been studying your scripture or whatever, talk about it. Talk about how you learned something or you studied something in your Bible study or you found some prayer answered which you had made, and let it be a conversation, not a monologue. Okay, again, it has to be a shared. Now, families, we encourage in Christian families that people should pray together. We say the family that prays together stays together. Now, it's not always possible to have a very regular prayer time sometimes, with everybody's coming and going differently. But try and find time to read the Bible and pray together. Okay, let it be a nice, flexible time. Okay, do different things. It doesn't have to be fixed. You don't have to have an order. Right? Do it differently. Let them lead sometimes. Sometimes it may be prayer around the dining table. Sometimes it may be prayer when they are going out. Sometimes it may be when they are leaving or whatever it is. Now, if you find that whatever you're doing is getting very stale and boring, okay, and the children are getting bored, then take a break and try something different, right? So let it be real and pray for real needs and issues. Pray for the children's issues. Pray for if their friends are having problems, pray for that. Pray for their teachers. Pray for your needs. Pray for the family's problems. Pray for the country's issues. Okay, so pray about real things, and in your discussions on faith, allow them to ask questions and disagree. Okay, you do that, there will be lots of disagreements, there'll be lots of questions. You will never have a boring time, okay, if you allow them to question, because it's encouraging for them if they know that they will not be scolded for having questions. Allow them, and it makes your life interesting also. Let me add, okay, they will ask you so many questions that you will not be able to know the answers. You will have to go and study yourself to find the answers, and that is challenging to you also, isn't it? So do that. And as they grow, be prepared that they may have a slightly different expression of their faith as from you. It may not be exactly the same. They may not want to go to the church you go to. They may not believe exactly in the God you worship. All right. They may be a little different. They may be very different. But you have to give them the freedom, because they have the freedom. They are going to be adults very soon. They have the freedom to have their own expression of faith. Whether you think it's right or wrong or whatever, you cannot force them into it. Okay, you can continue to talk, you can continue to discuss, reason, okay, and you can hope for the best, that they will learn to be mature, responsible, good, people who are good members of society, fear God, love and serve others. This is what our whole goal is of them. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you questions before opening up to further questions from you. This is the case which Abhijit was talking about, that 17-year-old who was driving the Porsche car and he hit somebody, two IT guys on a motorcycle, and both of them died. And you can see the state of the car, right? The car is smashed out of shape, really, and there's no number plate, which is very strange, isn't it? So tell me, what happened? You know the story. This is the time which is going to be interactive, so you can answer on the chat, put things into the chat as much as you want, and let's answer these questions. What happened to this kid? Is he a bad kid? What happened to that child? What is your first opinion? Please put it
Yes.
into the chat.
Yeah, friends, let's respond on the chat quickly so we can move ahead. What went wrong with this kid, do you think? What happened to
Did the
him?
kid go wrong, or was it the normal part of growing up?
Okay. Anyone?
Everybody knows the story. Should I tell a little bit about the story? The 17-year-old boy was driving. It was, I think, at I don't remember what time it was. Do you remember the time, Abhijit? Was it
3,
early morning?
3:15 a.m.
3:15 a.m. Yeah, it was early morning. And the child he was pretty drunk, I think. He was with his friends, and he doesn't remember what happened, he says, that night. He hit these people, and he was driving very fast, and he hit this motorcycle, and they died. Then subsequently, the driver of the car was traced, and the boy was taken to the youth center, the remand court. Okay, and the judge told him to write a 300-word essay on road safety. But then there was a public outcry, and then the police took into action, and the boy was taken to the remand home, and he had to give samples of his blood and urine and all that. And apparently, the mother's samples were given in place of the boys, because they probably feared that he would have alcohol in the bloodstream or something. Then they found that certain doctors had colluded with them to change the blood samples. Now the mother is also in custody, and I think the father also, and the boy is in custody, and investigations are going on. They found that there was nothing wrong with the car. The car was in good shape, but the car was not registered. It had only a temporary registration which had run out, because the owner of the car had not paid 1,700 rupees ka registration fee. All
Uh,
right, that's the story. So, what do you think happened to the kid driving the Porsche?
there's some response in the chat.
There's some response in the chat. I'll just have a look. Yes. Spoiled brat, pampered kid, result of wrong or neglected parenting. Okay. So is it the child's fault or the parents' fault? Here, two of them say spoiled brat, pampered kid, but here that is both kind of referring to the parents, right? The parents who spoiled brat would mean the parents spoiled him, right? Or is it the boy's fault? Who's what were the mistakes? Whose are the mistakes? Is it the boy's mistake or is it the parents' mistake? Someone else? That's my question.
Parents, somebody's written. Uh,
Both the parents and the boy, parents' mistakes. Okay. So the kid was given the luxury without teaching the responsibility. Parents. Okay. So a lot of people are saying parents. Okay. The boy is 17 years old. Remember what I said um, about the child's growth pattern. Okay. So he was driving fast and he was drunk. And he had a Porsche car, which I don't know how much it costs. If you Google it, you can find the exact cost of it, but it's probably in crores. Am I right? Both. Someone says both. Fault of both. Abhijit, check how much a Porsche costs.
88 lakhs.
88 lakhs. Okay. Less than a crore, but 88 lakhs. Okay. So they've given a boy what were the exact mistakes? Let's enumerate the mistakes. What were the parents' mistakes? Someone has said giving the child the luxury without the responsibility. Okay, that's one way of putting it. Anyone wants to say anything more? What exactly were the parents' mistakes? How did they manage to spoil this? The 17-year-old driving is illegal. Yes, that's a good point. He didn't have a license. Where did he learn that from, I wonder? Remember that this car did not have a registration. Okay, it had only a temporary registration which had run out because the parents had not paid the 1700 rupees car uh, registration fee. Registration fee is only 1700. The cost of the car is 88 lakhs. So is there a pattern here? Allowing the child to break all rules. Yes. Not only did they allow the child to break all rules, they broke the rules themselves, no? The car was not registered. You're not supposed to drive a car without a registration. It didn't have number plates. Isn't that strange? You buy an 88 lakh car and you don't register it. You think that was because we don't know why that was. It seems a little shady to me. Parents knew that they can play with the law. So the parents themselves did not respect the law, yes? If the parents didn't respect the law, what have they taught the child? Pattern of irresponsibility. Okay, yes? So the parents have uh, shown this irresponsible behavior. What do you think parents are teaching the child about laws and responsibility? They're teaching the child that you don't need to follow. They thought with money they can buy the justice system. Okay, so yeah, they also thought with money they could buy the medical system. They apparently bribed the doctors as well. Parents themselves will be people who think that money can buy everything. They apparently gave bribes to the doctors to change the blood samples. Do you think that they might have even given bribes to the judge? The judge was going to let off the boy on bail, writing a 300-word essay on road safety. 300 words. That's it. When he had killed two people. Not deliberately, not deliberately. Very unfortunate that it's happened, but two people died because of his drinking and driving fast. And the judge just gave a 300-word essay. It's possible, no, that they may have bribed the judge. What about the drinking itself? Okay, I'm not getting any answers here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So, where did the boy get into drinking? I mean, the drinking habit from, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Here you have a 17-year-old boy who's so drunk that he doesn't remember what happened.
Hmm.
Parents themselves, we
Yeah.
people think, hey, the money the parents have earned probably didn't come from right sources, so they don't value human lives or any virtues. Yeah, it's possible we don't know where their money came from. Okay, so you get the point here, right? There is a pattern which the parents, unfortunately, it's a very sad example of very irresponsible parenting by this family, where they have role modeled all the wrong things, no? They have role modeled valuing money. They have role modeled being a very selfish lifestyle where you buy a very expensive car, and they must be having lots of cars because otherwise, how would they give this expensive car to their son? They must be having several cars, otherwise, or else he took it without their knowledge. There's only two explanations. Either they've given it to him or he took it without their knowledge. So either way, it's a very selfish, hedonistic kind of lifestyle, which they have demonstrated to the child. It's not only selfish and hedonistic, it's also very illegal. No, they are doing things which are bordering on the illegal even before the child uh, crashed the car. They even before that they have not paid the registration. They are allowing him to drive without a license. These are all smaller crimes. Then you come to a huge big crime that when he has done this manslaughter, when two people have died, they are trying to change the blood samples and they're trying to bribe the judge. Okay, so these are major crimes that they are doing. So the parents are showing this kind of pattern and the boy has learned. No? Also, they have not prepared him for this whole thing about peer pressure. Do you think they taught him about how to handle peer pressure about drinking? They don't seem to have, no? Maybe, or maybe they are influential people. Maybe the boy was left to himself totally and mostly without parents being around him most of the time. All they left him is with money and all the leisure he wanted as an adult. So that's possible, okay? But that also is poor parenting, no? To leave the child alone and then maybe he took the card himself because they were not around, whatever, it's possible. But that also is poor parenting because it's setting a very poor example of how to involve with your family, of how to, care for your son, to explain things to him, to prepare him for adolescence and life itself. So yeah, it's a very sad story of bad parenting. But the boy also has responsibility here, as many of you have said. He's 17 years old. He could have, taken some calls on his own. So he cannot be completely absolved of responsibility for this. All right. So I will close here and leave the time open for